Om Ganati Miranda Syangarangana Sarakaya Chaksurun Miritam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutare Swayam Rupakaramayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sidevam Sadvaitam Suvarutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Larita Shri Vishikan Vitam Scha Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devam Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayodirayat Nishtaparayashu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagati Otamashoki Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Krishna Sadam Bhagate Dhammagana His Kado Nastadri Samasha Paranoko Dunodita Namo Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamani Misnaya Sarasati Devi Guruvani Pachadin Nirvishesa Sanyori Paskata Desatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Good morning, Sanjay. We'll catch you on your next trip to Utah. Good morning, Nora, all the way from Argentina. Samadhi Vibrations, Rupa Manjari, Jimmy and Taruni from Minnesota. Thank you so much for joining us. Anjali, good morning. WW Wisdom Wednesday. This will be a nice break from all the high drama and the elections that are going on. So give our minds a bit of a break from all of the tension and the stress. And what we're going to do is we're going to further chew the juice from this 39th verse, 3rd chapter, 1st canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. This will be part 2 in our discussion. Here's the verse once again. Ateha danya bhagavanta itam Yad Vasudeva Kila Lokanate Kurvanti Sarvatmakam Admabhavam Nayatra Boya Parivarta Ugra Stephen. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for joining us. Here's the translation. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes, and guarantees 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. I guess you could say one way of looking at this Wednesday morning, November 4th, is there's a huge struggling going on to see who will govern, not steward. I don't think that either candidate has the mindset of stewarding God's property. I think rather the mindset is this is our property, this is my country, this is my America, and I want my party and my people to make all the key decisions so that we can maximize our proprietorship, our stake in this material world. So that's hardly a transcendental position. The transcendental position is Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. God is the owner and the creator. See these beautiful mountains behind me? We didn't create those. We call this Utah. We call these Utah mountains, but they were around a long time before Utah declared its statehood. Utah declaring its statehood, and even the entire duration of Utah's statehood, whether it be 1 or 2 or 300 years, is just but a burp in the cosmic line of time. God created it. God owns it. And our role here is to steward it, use everything that comes under our sway to honor God. We talked on Sunday about Sudama. Sudama was a childhood friend of Krishna. And after they graduated from the Gurukul, Sudama went back to home. He practiced the Brahminical arts, doing pujas and sacrifices, but he wasn't much employed because the king of the area in which Sudama lived was envious of Lord Krishna. So when he learned that Sudama was a Krishna devotee, he intimidated the citizens into boycotting Sudama. So he didn't get any livelihood. So he went to Krishna and visited him on the appeals of his wife, after which Krishna gave him more wealth than Indra, the king of heaven. And yet Sudama lived in all these lavish circumstances, but he himself just slept in a simple bed, ate simple food. He used all of that wealth for worshiping Krishna. Now, America is a wealthy country. We're founded by the principle in God we trust. Well, we seem to have deviated from that significantly. If you don't use what God gave you, what God blessed you with, to honor him, if you're just having a big cat fight to see how you're going to divide the stolen property, then that doesn't bode well for the future of the country. So anyway, it says here, only the devotees, only if you're a devotee, can you look around, can you look at these Wasatch Mountains and think Krishna and not me or my country or my state or my party. Nirmamo nirahankara. And when you think Krishna, that mode of thinking connects you with Krishna, who's within the heart, who's within the very atom. We talked yesterday about how God's power comes from this Paramatma feature of his. Chaitradhyam chapi mambiri sarva chaitushubhara gyanam gyanam satvat yatas gyanam atamama. He's expanded himself, although he's a divine, unlimitedly potent person who has his own abode far from here in the spiritual world. It's an abode where there's no need of sunlight or moonlight or electricity. Everything is self-effulgent. And yet, he comes to this dark world. He penetrates into this dark world. In fact, he supports it. He pervades and supports it, just like the air supports the cloud. The air is unseen, but otherwise, how could the cloud, which is water and more dense than air, how could water float in air? It should drop, but it is the air itself which supports the more dense air and evaporation. Now, Krishna enters into each and every atom as the supersoul, and he also enters into the heart of every living being. Now we, as living beings, are 1/10,000th size of a tip of a hair. We're very small. We're indivisible. We're smaller than the atom. And yet Krishna enters into our hearts as well. He enters into that 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. From this all-pervasive aspect of the Lord, he derives his omnipotence and he derives his omniscience. He knows everything because he is everywhere, even within the atom, and he controls everything for the very, very same reason. As I mentioned yesterday, we're studying this coronavirus. It's far grosser than the spiritual self, the living entity, what to speak of the Paramatma, who is within the living being itself. It's far grosser, far cruder, bigger, more dense, and yet, although it's a material thing, and the scientists are marshaling all of their resources, all their microscopes, all their test equipment, to learn as much as they can about the coronavirus, they still say on a daily basis, there's a lot we don't know. It's been 7 months. The greatest scientists of the world are exclusively devoting themselves to learning about this virus, and still they say there's so much we don't know about it. And that's, compared to this living being, it's a gross material thing. And God is more subtle than the soul itself, which is 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair. So if you connect with the Lord by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, you connect with all power as well as all knowledge. If you want a vaccine, if you want to counteract this virus, then go deeper. Go more and more subtle. The more subtle you go, the more strength there is. Matter doesn't have the power to endure. Spirit never ceases. Now, let me ask you, which is more powerful? Which would you rather side with? Which would you rather throw in your lot with? Matter, which cannot endure, and spirit, which cannot change, which can never cease. Spirit, which is ongoing from beginning to end, eternal, enduring, imperishable. That's where the real power is. So if you want to vaccinate yourself against the virus, chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hari Rama, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. You will be connected with the greatest power there is. And if you have things to do, if you're executing your mission, your assignment for the Lord, there isn't any virus, any drive-by shooting, any terrorist, any drug, anything that can take you out until your time is done. And then when your time is done, when you break the tape, cross the finish line, having done your duty, Krishna says, well done, my good and faithful servant. It doesn't matter at that time what takes you out, whether it's old age or diabetes or a heart attack or coronavirus, doesn't matter. You're going to transition to an immortal, eternal spiritual body, and the Lord's going to gather you back into his sheltering breast. So take shelter, fortify yourself with the armor of faith and trust in the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. We quoted this verse yesterday, just to review. 9th verse, 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And thanks for being there, Prashant. Prashant is now on the scene, folks. So we're going to get all the good references here. Kavim Paranam, Anusasata, Anura Niyamsham Anushmaradyat. Anushmara means to remember. It's an impression that one holds within one's mind and within one's heart. So the impression that one should hold for fearlessness, for immunity, to be vaccinated against all the terror, the anxiety, the stress in the middle of a pandemic. The impression that one should hold on to is seeing the Lord as the smallest of the smallest. Nothing can get around him. Nothing can get past him. Nothing can flank him. Nothing can get behind him. Nothing can take him by surprise. He knows everything is going to happen before it happens. He knows what your enemy is going to do before your enemy even knows what your enemy is going to do. Now, how is that possible? From the material point of view, it's impossible. I can't know what my enemy's thinking before he knows it. Can I? Hey, no, you can't do that. But the Lord knows what your enemy is thinking before your enemy knows it. So would you agree with me then that the Lord, being the smallest of the smallest, makes him the most powerful, the most completely in control? And if you shmara, if your meditation is on the Lord, not necessarily as this big, gigantic, universal feature, not necessarily as Krishna in the spiritual world, but just to preliminarily think of the Lord as a preliminary meditation of the Lord, which will get you immunity, will get you vaccinated from all the fear, anxiety, stress in this material world. Just think of him as the smallest of the smallest. He's dancing on the tip of your tongue. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now his all-pervasiveness, and hence his omnipotency, is illustrated in a nice story. One time when he was on the planet 5,000 years ago, he was having a conversation with Queen Kunti. Kunti was reciting these beautiful prayers. Janmaishwarya Sutasubhyare Mamanaparam Nivaritam. Krishna was having a conversation with Kunti. But don't forget, he's not only the Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, but he's also the Paramatma within everyone's heart. So while the conversation with Kunti was going on, simultaneously, Ashwatthama threw a fire weapon into the womb of Uttara to try to kill her baby, who was Majprika. Majprika was at that time the only one who would cause the Pandava, the race of Pandavas, who are all devotees of the Lord, he was the only one that could ensure and perpetuate the dynasty of the Pandavas, because his brothers had all been killed in the Kurukshetra war. They'd been slaughtered while they were sleeping in their tent by this same Ashwatthama. And Ashwatthama's determination was to rid the world of Pandavas. And if he couldn't take out the 5 mature Pandavas, Yudhishthira, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadeva. He didn't have the power to take them out. He took out their teenage sons, and now he's going to take out their unborn son, grandson within the womb of his mother. And for that purpose, he threw a Brahmastra weapon at the embryo within the womb of his mother, Uttara. Now, Krishna's somewhere else, talking to Kunti. He's also simultaneously aware of everything that's going on. He senses, he sees, and when I say senses, I don't mean some niggling, some hint, some suspicion. He's fully aware. He's fully aware of the danger. He's fully aware that the Pandavas are not going to be able to counteract this fire weapon, which is intended to destroy their grandson in time. He realizes it's an emergency situation. The Pandavas are in a certain space, in a certain time, and for them to release their weapons, to get to the womb before the weapon does, they can't do it. So from a material point of view, it's a lost cause. The Pandavas will not be able to save their grandson Marj Prikat within the womb of his mother. And again, Krishna is not bound by material considerations. He doesn't have to worry about what we can or cannot do. He doesn't have to be limited by the things that limit us. He's not bound by time or space. So he's talking, listening to the prayers of Kunti. At the same time, he's within each and every atom. So he manifests himself instantly, because he knew before Ashwatthama knew that Ashwatthama would release the Brahmastra. So Krishna was prepared in advance to counteract it. Now the Pandavas, they're great devotees, but they're not omniscient. So they could only know what was happening after Ashwatthama knew what he was going to do. You follow me on this? When they would have seen or intimated that Ashwatthama was preparing his weapon, drawing back his mantra-laden bow, and releasing it, only after Ashwatthama acted could they perceive what he was up to, where the weapon was going, what his intent was, and then react. And in this case, they didn't have time to react. It was already too late in the natural course of affairs. That's why we say Krishna, again, is inconceivable. He was able to head off Ashwatthama's weapon before it reached the child, because he didn't have to react to Ashwatthama's action. He knew before Ashwatthama knew what he was going to do. In fact, if you want to really take it to the next level, he knows everything. He knew 1,000 years before, 100 years before, 1,000,000. He knew before what Ashwatthama was going to do. So you can never pull the wool over Krishna's eyes. You can never pull a fast one on Krishna. You can never get the drop on Krishna. Krishna will, and the gunfight at the OK Corral at high noon, Krishna will have his gun out of his holster before you even think of drawing it. He's inconceivable. So who better to take shelter of for protection than the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Ekadesha Stitashnagnyar. This is in the 3rd canto, Prashant. I'm not sure which verse. Ekadesha Stitashnagnyar. Jojna Vistiriniam. Parasha Shaktir Brahmanish Tatevam Akalajara. Just like a fire, Ekadesha. Eka means one place. Stitash Agnir. A fire is in one place. However, Jojna Vistarini Parasha Shaktir Akadamatim Jarat. The fire light, the heat and the light spreads itself a long distance from the fire. We say, oh, that fire feels good. But actually, we're not speaking of the fire. If we were that close to the fire itself, we wouldn't say it feels good. We'd be screaming in agony. But because the heat and light are non-different from the fire, we can sit 20 or 30 feet away safely and comfortably and nice toastedly and say the fire feels good. So in the same way, the Lord is talking to Kunti in his original personal form as Bhagavan, but he's also simultaneously, inconceivably acting everywhere, but specifically somewhere else in such a way as to protect his devotees. Now, this principle of the Lord's being everywhere and able to protect us at all times, in all circumstances, not bound by time or space, not bound by the reaction time, not needing to see what our opponent is up to first before he reacts. All these qualities adhere to the Lord. This principle is put into effect every time we offer food. Devotees never eat food without first offering it to the Lord. Someone says, why would you offer food to the Lord? He's spiritual. He doesn't have a material body. According to you guys, he wouldn't have to take in calories in order to keep his energy level up. He wouldn't have to sleep at night. He wouldn't have to do any of the things that we do, that we have to do to maintain our material bodies. And that's all true. He doesn't need food, but we need to offer him food. We're constitutionally servants of God. If we don't perform any service to the Lord, then we're useless, right? If the value of the finger is only in terms of what service it can do to the whole. If the finger goes on strike, it's useless. If it's severed, lying in the street, it's useless. Again, in third canto, Prashad, Ata Turur Mulan Isechana Tadskanda Bujopashaka Pranopaha Rakshya Tendaram Tatayava Savaram Achuteja. Just as all the senses work together to satisfy the stomach, and when the stomach is satisfied, then all the other parts of the body are satisfied. Just as putting water on the root of the tree nourishes all the flower, fruit, twigs, similarly satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead accomplishes all purposes. And Krishna gives the pathway. We're talking now about the pathway to victory for Biden, the pathway to victory for Trump, and what states it goes through. So the pathway for victory for all living beings is to offer a flower, fruit, leaf, and water to the Lord before you eat it in love and devotion. Our pathway is patram pushpam palam teyam yome bhakti tarishnama asname parayatadmana. Krishna says, you can please me. The pathway to serve me is to offer your food to me before you eat it. And the food should be flower, fruit, leaf, water, grains, legumes, or dairy. Doesn't mention poultry, doesn't mention fish, doesn't mention meat. These items are in the mode of ignorance. They are not offerable. The Lord will not accept them. He does not condone gratuitous violence to other of his living beings. However, if you take from this list that the Lord has given, prepare the food. One point, if you're inspired to do this at home, don't taste it. Don't taste it. It's going to be offered to the Lord. So you have to not taste it while you're cooking. You know, like that, is there enough salt? No. You have to just do your best. In the 50 years I've been a devotee, and all the prasadam I've eaten, which has never been tasted by the cooks, there's never been a disaster. The only time was in Australia. One time in the evening, we usually take hot milk with a little bit of sugar in it before we go to bed. It helps you sleep. So the devotee took salt. He took from the salt container instead of the sugar container. So it was offered, and we took our evening milk and bananas, and it tasted terrible. Other than that one incident, we've never suffered because of the cooks not tasting the food. Krishna, it works out. It works out good. And it's not the food that Krishna needs or the food that Krishna tastes. It's the devotion. He enjoys, he recognizes, he relishes the devotion and the service attitude with which you offer the food. And if you can grow your own food, as we do here, we have about an acre under cultivation, and boy, did our gardens explode this year. You wouldn't believe the produce that we got out of just an acre of land. It's just another manifestation of God's inconceivable potencies. So then how can we with confidence offer food to God who lives millions and millions of miles away in the spiritual world? Again, it's that principle of the Paramatma. God is within every atom. He's within the heart of every living being. So he's far away, but he can appear right before you in order to enjoy the prayers and the offerings that you're making. How is that? Sarvata pari param tat sarvatat sitsiramaka sarvam sutima sarmaritya tishtati. Everywhere, because of his all-pervasive Paramatma feature, everywhere are his hands and feet. Everywhere are his nose, eyes, ears. Everywhere is his mouth. He's not bound or limited according to time or space like we are. I can only reach out 3 or 4 feet to take the food and put it into my mouth. But God can reach, he can span millions and millions of light years and appear just at the time that you utter the offering prayers. Namo Mahabharanaya Krishna Prema Vidayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaurse Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanitaya Chaljikaritaya Krishnaya Govinaya Namo Namaha. And if you don't know those prayers, don't worry. Just put portions of the food that you've prepared on a special plate that you don't eat off of, put it on your altar or put it before the picture of the Lord, bow down and say, Lord, you created this, you own it, I want you to have the first right of enjoyment. And he can accept that offering even from as far away as the spiritual world, because he is at one and the same time far away and nearer to you than your own soul. He's within each and every atom. So every time we offer food, we shmaranam sarvatra. We think of how the Lord is the smallest of the smallest. Therefore, the process of offering your food is not only a process of exhibiting gratitude and honoring the Lord with the paraphernalia of his creation, but for you, it's a process of deep peace, joy, and satisfaction. It immunizes you from the stress, fear, and anxiety in this material world. The animals are always full of fear. Human beings who have not awakened their spiritual sense are even more full of fear than the animals. They accumulate, they acquire so many possessions, and then they get attached to them, and they're full of anxiety at how will my position be taken away? Will I no longer be able to fly in Air Force One attended by all kinds of servants? Will I no longer have my fawning sycophants calling my name and cheering for me? I'm so attached. I want that. I will move heaven and earth. I will commit crimes. I will do whatever I have to do. I will subvert the Constitution. I will upend the principles of my country in order that I continue to be worshipped and adorated. That's not happiness, folks. It's not. If you want to be happy, the first thing you do, just release it. Just release it. We come to this world with nothing. We leave with nothing. We should live as simple a life as possible. We should never covet fruitive results. We should never covet fame, name, notoriety. It is a formula for anxiety and for stress and dissatisfaction. It says here, one who sees the supersoul equally present everywhere. And this is actually the translation, Prashant, to the 29th verse in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Samam pasyam hi sarvatra samavashtitam ishwaraham nahinash. In other words, Ishwara, the supreme controller, is everywhere. Nahinashti atmaratmanam tato yati paramam gatim. Focused on the highest goal, connecting oneself as a part to the whole, as a servant to the Lord. The result, it says in the translation of this verse, is that one does not degrade himself by his mind. He feels peace, joy, satisfaction, security. He knows that nothing or no one can lay a finger on him without the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is everywhere present. In the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna Krishna Mahabaho Bhaktanam Twameko Danyama Apavargo Sisamsiraha. Says Krishna is Mahabaho. He's described as many arms. Many arms. That basically means that because his arms and legs are everywhere, he's many armed. He can protect you. He can stand with his many arms between you and whatever it is that seeks to harm you. He can buffer you. The opposing elements, the threat may get close. It may seem as if it's going to take you out, but don't forget, Krishna can be between you and the harm, even the width of an atom. I heard about there was a robin trying to get a bug. But the bug was on one side of the plane of glass, and the robin was on the other side of the plane of grass. So the robin was trying to reach out and eat the bug, but it kept hitting that plane of glass. And the bug on his part must have thought, oh, I'm done, I'm gone for, the robin is so close. And the robin must have thought, I'm so close, my eating this bug is a foregone conclusion, I can already taste him. But the thin pane of glass protected the bug from the robin. And the bug needn't have worried. The bug needn't have worried. There was no way that as bad and as threatening as the situation looked and as close as the danger was, it couldn't get through that razor-thin plane of glass. Similarly, there may be times when it seems like your opponent is on top of you, in your face, has got you in a place that you think you cannot get out of. But remember, your enemy can be as close as an atom. There might only be an atom separating you and your opponent. That's enough. That's all the Lord has to work with. And he can get the job done. He can wrap you in the cloak of his loving protection. That Lord is bowed to. That Lord is worshipped by great, great demigods, the creator of the universe. Lord Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Anadir Govinda, Sarva Karana Kaunam. Lord Brahma says, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, than who no one is greater or equal. That Lord whose body is full of knowledge, bliss, and eternity. That Lord who has no other Lord above him. Lord Shiva worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Aradhanam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, 28th verse, 8th chapter, Krishna assures Arjuna, and through Arjuna, all of us, that there is no higher activity. If you opt for devotional service, you're not missing out on anything. Remember that Robert Frost poem, he comes to a fork in the road, and he contemplates that if he takes the right fork, then he'll never know what the fruits of having taken the left fork would have been, or vice versa. But one doesn't miss anything. One doesn't miss any fruit, any gain so far as knowledge, detachment, abundance, peace, or joy by opting to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the one thing doing which everything else is accomplished. Just like when the hand puts the food in the mouth, then all the body is nourished. When you water the root of the tree, then the whole tree is taken care of. Similarly, Krishna assures Arjuna, Vedashu yagashu tapassu chaiva, danashu yat panyam phalam pritishtam, atyeti tad sarvamidam bitvam, yogi param shtanam apayati chajam. One who accepts the path of devotional service is not missing, not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing austerities, doing sacrifices, giving charity, or pursuing either philosophical or fruitive activities. Simply on the basis of performing devotional service, that one thing, he attains all the benefits, all the fruits of those other activities, and he attains a further benefit which is not available through those other pathways, in addition to gaining everything that's to be gained by pursuing devotional service. At the end, one goes back to home, back to Godhead. Now let's look at how torturous, painstaking, and how prolonged the process is for getting back to home, back to Godhead, through these other inferior, less direct pathways. Prabhupada takes us through it here. First of all, from the age of 5 to the age of 20, this is if you want to get to the ultimate destination by pursuing jnana and austerities and the other practices. From the age of 5 to 20, one has to study under the spiritual master. That's a period of 15 years. And during that time, he may develop perfect character. Now, this study of the Vedas under the guidance of the spiritual master is not a recreational armchair activity for speculators, but it is a very disciplined process whereby one serves the spiritual master with great affection and in a menial way. Now, after this 15 years of training, the celibate student, because there's no intermingling between men and women, celibacy is absolutely required during these 15 years up to the age of 20. At that point, he is allowed to marry between 20 and 25. Then he's called a householder. He's no longer a brahmachari, a celibate student, but he's a grihastha. He's a householder. And as a householder, his obligations to perform many sacrifices so that he can achieve further enlightenment and detachment. There are 16 sanskaras that the householder is obliged to perform for the children. And then he has to give charity. Every sacrifice has to become accompanied by charity. Even when you cook an ordinary meal, you take it, you offer it to Krishna. The family generally, a traditional Vedic family, doesn't eat right away. They wait to see if there any hungry person will come to the door, or if any guest comes. They will feed that hungry person. They'll feed that guest first, and then if there's nothing left, they'll either fast or they'll recook. So charity is a big part of making progress in these various disciplines and processes. Now, after executing householder life, children are grown, have some income of their own, they're able to stand on their own 2 feet, then one may evolve to the next stage, which is semi-retired life, or vanaprastha. Vana means forest. So the husband and wife, in order to become detached from family affairs, they may travel through forests, walking, dressed in tree bark, not shaving, visiting the holy places of pilgrimage, taking prasadam at the temples, listening to the discourses of the sages, rendering some service, cutting up vegetables or cleaning, whatever it is that they can do. And then finally, the wife will go back and help take care of the grandchildren, and the husband often will take sannyas, which is civil suicide. Then he will work no longer in terms of the limited family concept, but he will travel widely and he will preach Krishna consciousness for the greater family of humankind and also advocate mercy for the animals. Doing this, one becomes gradually weaned of material attachments and anxieties and is eligible to go to the heavenly planets. Now, one who becomes more advanced is eligible to be liberated into the spiritual sky in terms of merging or becoming one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's a path which is also outlined by Vedic literature. It's called the path of moksha. Finally, the beauty of Krishna consciousness is, however, if you simply get attached to a spiritual master. Now, I didn't have any of that training, any of that background. I was already 23 years old when I met my spiritual master. Without any of that background or any of those assets to my credit, I became attracted to Prabhupada's effulgent, transcendent personality. I wanted what he had, and some or other he accepted me as a servant, and some or other the last 50 years I've been engaged in his devotional service. So according to the conclusion of all Vedic literatures, by that one stroke of approaching, inquiring from, and rendering service to a pure devotee of the Lord, one can surpass all those aforementioned rituals of the different orders of life, and by making advancement as a devotee squarely in the middle of devotional service, That service alone dispels all tension, all anxiety, all acquisitiveness, all enmity towards other living beings. And God's activities, pastimes, form, name, and paraphernalia are so powerful and so attractive. It is said that all misgivings, all dirty things are removed from the heart and one becomes fixed in devotional service. This is how it's summarized here, Prashant, in the 25th verse of the 25th chapter of the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Satam pashangam mama virya sambido bhavanti ritkaina reshayano kata tasjoshara rishu apavarga vartmani shadharatir anukramashati. Throughout our talks yesterday and today, the word abhaya or apavarga, fearlessness, is translated as a synonym for immunity, for liberation. As soon as you become free from fear, you essentially become free from birth, death, disease, and old age. And the sure-tried way to become free from fear is to drink through oral reception the topics of the name, fame, form, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. By drinking the nectar through the ears, the heart becomes satisfied, becomes full of joy. The living entity becomes pleased and deeply, deeply fulfilled. And any unwanted anarthas, anything that's going to obstruct their path back to home, back to Godhead, is directly removed by the mercy of the Lord. One becomes advanced in terms of hearing and chanting. It's to be understood. Such is already a liberated soul. Such a person is already freed from the bounds and bonds and trappings of material nature. Real devotional service and devotional service begin. And by that attraction, one goes back to home, back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of He who originally created us. Lacking devotional service, following any sort of inferior path, there's always the element of fear and anxiety in the hearts of the living beings. But the Lord, His first qualification, first thing He does for those who honor Him, first thing He does, the first thing you can expect if you're encountering this philosophy and lifestyle for the first time, I'll give you a heads up. As soon as you start sheltering the Lord, offering your food, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, first thing you can expect, you look for it, is the elimination, the removal of fear. This is what the Lord promises to His devotees. You serve me, and I will serve you in terms of reducing the level of your fear, ultimately according to the intensity and advancement of your devotional service down to zero. Otherwise, this material world is samsara davanalika. It's like we're in a forest fire. In the forest fire, all the small animals, the chipmunks, the squirrels, the snakes, they're all going to get overtaken and immolated by the rushing flames. However, if a cloud comes and dispenses its profuse, abundant rainfall over the forest, then immediately the fire stops and all the living entities get immediate relief from the scorching flames of the forest fire. So the spiritual master, by his words, by his knowledge-laden, fear-relieving words, dispenses the cooling rain of the name, fame, form, paraphernalia, topics about Krishna, and thereby extinguishes the blazing fire of material existence for those who lend submissive oral reception. Further confirming here in the 41st verse, 25th chapter, 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam, I believe this is Kapila Dev, if I'm not mistaken. Nanyatram had Bhagavata pradana purusheswarat atmanam sarvabhutaram bhayam tibram nivartate. Bhayam again is fear, and abhayam is immunity from repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. So it is described that the Lord, Sri Krishna, is full of all opulences, all knowledge, all power. He's all pervasive. He's all knowing. He can preempt anything that's coming against us, including birth, death, disease, and old age. Therefore, he is described as being perfectly competent to deliver one from the cycle of birth and death. He's also called Pradhana because he is supreme. Krishna is equally disposed, as we've described many times before, to everyone. He created us. He is the seed-giving Father. He loves us all equally. He's not partial to one or another. However, samaham sarva name dvaishasya ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. It's just natural that although a father loves equally his sons, a king loves equally his citizens, those who step up and render direct service to the king or to the father, they have a special place of affection in their father or that king's heart. And he will deliver them. He will personally look after them and look over them. They're never alone. They're never on their own. They always have the hovering, sheltering presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And all we have to do in order to deserve that, to merit that love, that protection, that guidance, that direction, just hear and chant. Pibanti, te bhagavatam atmanam saram. Just drink, just like you eat. You can't live without eating. Eating's not a chore, is it? Does anyone say, oh, I have to eat now. I have to eat khichdi. My favorite food is khichdi, papadums, and some mango pickle. That's all I need. I'm just like, phew, I could eat that every day, every meal. Khichdi, a papadum, baked, not fried, and some mango pickle. Oh my gosh. You can put a little vegetables, you can put some carrots and potatoes in the khichdi if you want. That's all I need. So I've never in my life said, oh my gosh, I have to go eat khichdi again. I have to nourish myself, it's such a chore. I've never said that. I said, khichdi, wow, Haribo. And of course, there's so many varieties of foodstuffs, and you can offer them all to Krishna. It says that Radharani has been cooking for and offering a different preparation to Krishna since eternity. There's so many varieties. People who think, well, if I ate vegetables, why would it just be green beans and mashed potatoes? Not hardly. There's so many. And we're coming up to Diwali, which is also a celebration of Annakut. It's the harvest time. It's our Vedic version of Thanksgiving. And at this time, a mountain of food is offered to Krishna. We'll celebrate this 14th of November in the evening from 6 till 8 in our Salt Lake City Center. You're all invited. But there will be a mountain of food offered to Krishna, and all made of fruits and vegetables and grains, dairy products, no meat, no poultry, no chicken. So just as eating is not a chore, it's one of the greatest pleasures of life. I mean, how much zest would we even have for maintaining our lives if we couldn't eat? And not only the act of eating, of tasting, have out of foodstuffs, but usually we eat with our friends and our family members. It's a high point of our day. If you look back over your life, you can think of the holidays where you sat down with your families and you ate and you talked and you fraternized. It's not a chore. Similarly, eating for the soul is not a chore. Just like we put food in the mouth to satisfy the stomach, you put food of topics about Krishna in your ear and it satisfies the heart. It satisfies the soul. And the more you do it, the more you get a taste for it, the more you relish it, the less you would even think of missing it. And we congregate in our 820 centers of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, morning and evening as devotees. And there are so many festival days in which there's a larger gathering. We sing and dance, and we celebrate, and we nourish the soul by drinking through the ear holes the transcendental topics about Krishna. The more you hear about Krishna, the more you become attracted by Krishna, the more you become advanced in Krishna consciousness. In essence, you just fall head over heels in love with Krishna. And you come to the highest perfectional stage of the human form of life, which Prabhupada says enables the devotee, the practitioner of devotional service, to be transferred to Krishna's ultimate abode in the spiritual sky, Goloka Vrindavan, where the devotee becomes eternally happy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you. That's been our presentation this November 4th, 2020. With us right now, Thomas. I hope your mother is recuperating, getting her mobility back with your expert assistance. Nate, every time I go out, I turn on the radio. So many wonderful songs. Such a wonder. I have a whole bunch of more lectures I need to upload. I'll put them on a stick and reach out to you so we can do that. Pankaj Das, joining us for the first time. Sabita Rotre, sorry if my pronunciation. Kat Caldwell, we don't see you enough. We don't see you and Bruce enough nowadays. You're such good friends, and we have so much that we resonate with. Prashant, thank you for leaving all those breadcrumbs of philosophical verses with which anyone at any time in the future can visit our Facebook page and reconstruct the pathway that we took this morning, the pathway back to home, back to God, the pathway of fearlessness. Radhe Shyam Prabhu, regular, staunch listener. Tulsi, Haribol, Tulsi, nice to see you. Tulsi lives down on Oceanside. We would have normally done a Festival of Colors in Oceanside this year were it not for the pandemic. Anjali, love Anjali's beautiful singing voice, her sense of humor. She adds vim and vigor. Jimmy and Taruni, every morning you're here. And Nora, what a delight from South America. Haribo, I get your Instagram posts, your new music. Sanjay, next time, let's get together. Jean, thank you for joining. Ramnath Kaul and Rupa Manjari. Those are the ones who have liked our post and the ones that have commented. I see several comments here from Thomas, from Prashant, of course, from Nate, a big smile. So thanks very much. I don't have anything to say. It's such a quagmire, the material world. Whatever, the best advice I can give anybody in all circumstances to become free from stress, anxiety, etad nirvadatam, ichatam akato bayam, yoginam nibanitam, hari nama nukirtanam. In all circumstances, just do one thing. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, because Krishna's in control. He's got it covered. He's in the atom. He's in your heart. He has special regard for his devotees. It doesn't mean that troubles won't come. It doesn't mean that enemies won't appear intimidatingly, threateningly, as close to you as an atom. But it does mean that all Krishna needs is the breadth of an atom to place himself between you and whatever it is that threatens or concerns you and enfold you in his complete sheltering protection. So, Shmaram, always remember, go throughout the day, never forgetting that Krishna is not only the biggest of the biggest, but he's also the smallest of the smallest. And that makes him all-knowing and all-powerful. And if you're in the palm of his hand, you should always have a smile on your face. You should always be happy, expectant, anticipatory. You should always be full of joy and peace and a light to anyone in whose midst you find yourself throughout the day. So, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We'll see you for these kinds of sessions next Monday. And in the meantime, feel free to join us on the weekend also. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.